right, yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back, Fast Break Podcast. Back coming at you guys with episode 8. Really excited for this one. We got a lot going down. And first things first, me and Vinny recently were involved in a 20-man fantasy football draft. And I was the manager of this league. I had the idea.
Okay.
I thought it would be pretty cool. I wanted to do 32 teams originally, but it was not an option. So we had 20 teams. How was your experience with it? I enjoyed it. I thought it was cool, to be honest.
Okay, first I have a question. So
Mhm.
ESPN put the cap at 20 teams. Do
Mhm.
you wish we did 32 teams despite the draft last night? Because I mean, if you look at how many guys were taken, there were four-string running backs taken. The waiver wire, the best running back is projected for like 1.7 points.
Yeah.
So do you wish there were 32 teams, or are you happy with the 20?
Honestly, I'm kind of glad that we ended up doing 20. I think that 32 would have been a bit much. So yeah, I mean, I think that I'm happy with the ultimate decision to do 20. I think that panned out well. And then me and you wanted to go over our teams. So I mean, obviously we're familiar with each of
Yeah.
our teams respectively. Let's break them down. I want to hear some strategy. How did you
Okay.
draft? How did it go down?
So I logged in an hour early. I saw the 16th pick. I wasn't thrilled about it. Okay, 16 was obviously towards the end. My goal, I was targeting Nick Chubb, maybe Najee Harris. They didn't fall to me. So I took Antonio Gibson with my first rounder. Second rounder, I needed a receiver because I wanted to kind of balance it out. So I'm with Keenan Allen. I think Keenan Allen's gonna have a good year with Justin Herbert as a quarterback. What were your first two picks? Because I believe we picked around the same spot. I mean, we were both towards the back end of the first round.
Yeah, so I was picked 13 out of 20,
Okay.
and my first round pick, I was not super happy with it. I got Najee Harris, and I think he's gonna have a great year. I read up on him, great dual back. He can obviously run the ball, great receiving back as well, which I like. I think that they need a running back. He's going to be their running back one, of course. They lost James Conner. I like him a lot. Hopefully, he's going to be good. And then my second round pick, I got DK Metcalf. Um, I know that he has a lot of problem with holding on to the ball. I know he got a case of butterfingers, but I think he can be good. I mean, he was pretty good in fantasy last year from what I remember. So hopefully he can have a repeat season and get even better. He's still young. I know he's explosive, very athletic. I like him a lot. Those are my first two
Okay.
picks.
Then I want to go over kind of, I guess, the mid rounds of the draft. Third round, I need a quarterback because this league, if you don't get a good quarterback, you're pretty much
You're
you're
screwed.
kind of you're kind of asked or screwed.
Hmm.
We have a team starting Daniel Jones. I didn't want that, so I went with Russell Wilson. He can run the ball. He can throw it. He obviously has DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. He was good in fantasy last year,
Hmm.
but the fourth round is when things got bad for me. The draft was, I believe, 9:45. So I took Travis Etienne, and I needed
Hmm.
my second running back. And if you know, Travis Etienne is out for the season. So I currently on my note sheet right here, it says Travis Etienne. He's not going to play, so I'm going to have to start Kevin Coleman unless I can whip up a trade. But I mean, the teams aren't like very deep, so it's going to be hard to get a trade. And then tight end, I'll mention my tight end. I got Noah Fant. I thought that was a pretty good pick.
Hmm.
The tight ends, obviously, 20 tight ends in the league. I don't want to be stuck with the 20th worst tight end. Noah
Yeah,
Fant was a good pick. What
I
about the rest
agree.
of your team?
Rest of my team, I got Matt Stafford. I wanted Ryan Tannehill. If you're picking fantasy, I'm telling you guys, this is the strat. I'm gonna reveal it. And I told Vinny this before we drafted. I didn't tell him my strategy, but this is my strat. I think what people need to do, Ryan Tannehill is gonna have an amazing season. He's gonna be a top 3 fantasy
Give
quarterback.
him the name. Give him the name of the strategy.
I call it Double T Diner.
Okay.
Because my strategy is I pick a ton of running backs and receivers who I think have good upside. I draft Ryan Tannehill in like a mid to late round. And if he's still available, I try to snag Trevor Lawrence. I'm actually off that train now, though, because from what I've seen recently, he has not been playing that well in the preseason. But still, he's so talented. He can't be bad.
Yeah.
The worst he can be is a QB2 in fantasy, in my
Yeah.
opinion. Um, but yeah, I actually have one question, and then we can move on to our next topic. Who is your biggest steal? Now, in a 20-man league, there's bound to be some guy who's going to be a make or break. Who is that guy for you?
No, I'm pretty sure no one's heard of this guy. Nico Collins, wide receiver for the Texans. And I'm going to explain why right now. Deshaun Watson, I don't know if he plays. Doesn't matter. Yes. Tyrod Taylor is going to be the quarterback. And I'm going to explain why Nico Collins is a rookie. The Texans are going to be horrendous. They're going to be
Mhm.
focused on playing their young guys. I think Nico Collins is going to get a ton of targets. And he was pretty good at Michigan, so I think he was a steal. And I mean, you could mention your steal, but is it true that your brother kind of ruined your plans of the draft?
My brother did indeed. He actually took Ryan Tannehill from me. He was a pick before me, I believe. He also took Nick Chubb out of my hands. And he took one. I think he took Mike Davis as well, which I was very upset about. I had to snag James Robinson, who now I actually am glad I took instead of Mike Davis because ETN's out. So sorry about that, Vinny. But James
It's
Robinson's
okay.
going to be getting a lot of snaps. And I also have Carlos Hyde. So no matter what, I think my running back situation is set because I think Jacksonville hopefully will run the ball a lot this year. Fingers crossed if Lawrence is going to struggle early on. But I'm gonna go real quick. I'm just gonna briefly go over him. Sammy
Yeah.
Watkins was my sleeper pick because we were talking about this earlier. I think he's gonna be a wide receiver one in Baltimore. Obviously, their receiving corps isn't the greatest. It's kind of full of a lot of wide receiver two, wide receiver three kind of guys. Sammy Watkins, I've always liked him a lot. In Buffalo, Kansas City. So I think that he's gonna be a good guy for Lamar to target. Decent route runner. I like him a lot. So that's my guy. He's sitting at my flex spot right now. Also OJ Howard. I just have a good feeling about him. So those are my guys. And what are we moving on to next? We have three more topics we want to talk
Yeah.
about. One of them being a
Is the
debate, the other one being a top 10 list. Which one are we
okay.
which one are we hitting?
Ball.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the top 10 players of all time. Now,
Mm-hmm.
this it could get a lot of hate if our lists are bad. I think my list is, I mean, pretty good. I made it.
Do you
So
want to
I
run down real quick? Do you want to run down like each of our lists, like I do my list and then you do your list, or by like ranking? Like, are we
we
going to
should
do?
go by my opinion is we should go by rankings starting at the bottom.
Okay.
Because I feel like number two and number one, we're gonna have a lot of flip and
Yeah, I think I know who you have at number one because you're a
okay.
big
This
somebody
guy
guy.
fan.
All right. Well, I guess I'll start it off at number 10. And
Okay.
it might be a surprise to you. The man on my wall up there, I'm a big Kobe Bryant fan. I love
Okay.
Kobe. I have three things of him up there, actually. Kobe Bryant's my favorite player of all time. Even though I'm a Celtics fan, I don't know. I love his work ethic, man. Easily the one of the biggest culture guys in basketball.
Yeah.
Disrespected as a playmaker. People say he doesn't pass. That's just cap. One of the best positional playmakers for a shooting guard, in my opinion. The only thing I think that holds him back, the efficiency. As much as I love the guy, very inefficient as a scorer, but he got the job done. Incredible leader, incredible workhorse. You gotta love the
Incredible
guy.
person.
Yeah,
Incredible person.
you cannot knock Kobe Bryant.
Um, my number 10, his first name starts with K. Some people call him a snake, some people call him a cupcake. He's number
Mhm.
10 on my list. Kevin Durant. And I feel like this one varies because I mean, we talk about greatest scorers. So if it was the greatest scorers list of all time, Kevin Durant possibly
Mhm.
be one. He is one of the best scorer I have seen in
Mhm.
my lifetime. The accomplishments, I think they're there, but maybe not in the way that you would like them. I
Mhm.
know he had to join Golden State. He did get his two rings and his final MVP, scoring title, MVP. He does it all. Olympian, gold medal. I mean, Kevin Durant, I think by the end of his career, maybe I'm a little premature on putting him in the top 10, but by the end of the career, I think there should be no debate that he's a top 10 player.
Well, I do not think you're premature putting him top 10 because I have him at number 9. Kevin Durant, probably my second or third favorite non-Celtic of all time. Yo, guys, it's Luca. I just want to say real quick, I had Kevin Durant at number 9 on my top 10 list, and I completely forgot to include Tim Duncan. So just a quick revision, post-editing and post-reviewing the video, I would probably put Tim Duncan at 9, keep Kobe at 10, and move Kevin Durant to like 11 as an honorable mention. My bad for the mishap, and let's get back to the video.
Um, oh, I just realized well, no, I didn't forget this guy, but I'm gonna get roasted for not having him on the list. We'll get into it a bit later.
Mm-hmm.
Number 9, I'm going with Hakeem Olajuwon. Okay, Hakeem Olajuwon. I didn't watch a lot of Hakeem Olajuwon. I wasn't alive,
Yep.
but from the people that were alive, old heads, they seem to love Hakeem. Obviously, in the 2 years that Jordan wasn't in the league, he won 2 titles.
Mm-hmm.
If Jordan wasn't in the league, I know it's an if, blah blah blah, but he could have been amazing. He could have
Mm-hmm.
had a lot more rings. The Dream Shake, amazing move.
Mhm.
The Rockets team, I mean, he really set the tone for the Rockets as a franchise, and I don't think a lot of people talk about Hakeem, and
Mhm.
I don't know, but he's number 9 for me.
Well, guess what? Hakeem is number 8 for me. You know, obviously, I think he's one of the best defenders of all time, but I have a couple more big men in front of him. And the reason because of that is because his offensive game was kind of inconsistent. The
Yeah,
efficiency wasn't bad. Obviously, he was always shooting like above 50% from the field and stuff. So, and he had the dream shake, killer footwork, probably some of the best footwork of all time down low, probably the best footwork, obviously. But I think his defensive prowess made up for some of his offensive incapabilities. Dude was a monster, definitely
mhm,
easily one of the best centers of all time. Slightly overrated in my opinion, though. I feel like a lot of
okay,
people go crazy about Hakeem, but he's gonna sit at number 8. I feel like that's a fair spot.
okay.
Mhm.
My number 8, it's pretty fitting. His birthday was a couple of days ago. Rest in peace, Kobe Bean Bryant. Obviously, as a Celtics fan, he gave me a lot of heartache. I remember watching the 2010 finals. Him and Ron Artest dogged us, and they won in Game 7. But you can't. That doesn't affect how skilled he was. One of the
Mhm.
best scorers I've seen. The inefficiencies, obviously, there. Great work ethic. I mean, just so revolutionary. I think him and AI are probably the culture guys of the NBA. Maybe we
Mhm.
could talk about that in another episode. But number 8 for Kobe. I mean, I saw a thing again, Instagram. Okay, it's not good, but I saw the thing. I maybe you saw that he had 2 Hall of Fame careers, one as 8 and one
Mhm.
as 24, and the case made sense to me. I think he
Yeah,
really, if that was 2 different players, he would get in.
for sure.
So I mean, just a long career, Laker for life. I always respect loyalty, and he's number 8.
Yep. I don't dislike that. That's a good placement for Kobe. At number 7, though, I have a guy who I really like, Larry Bird. He's a very underrated do-it-all player. I feel like not a lot of people talk about, everybody talks about his shooting, his ability to score, but again, underrated playmaker. All these guys, they can do it all. Very underrated defender as well. Very scrappy guy. I feel like, in my opinion, he's one of the most well-rounded players to ever do it. I don't think it needs any more explaining. Number 7 for me for sure.
Number 7 for me. It's going to be a boring pick. Maybe people think it's a bit too high. I'm going Tim Duncan, the big fundamental.
Okay.
Um, no one really watches Tim Duncan highlights. He was just a fundamental, really sound player. The Spurs dynasty was because of Tim Duncan.
Hmm.
And I think he was a swimmer. I could have got that wrong, but I think he was a swimmer at one point.
Yeah.
And 5 chips? Does he have 5 chips?
Yeah,
Just
he
off the
does.
top of my dome, he
He
has
has as many
5
as
chips.
Kobe. As many as
He has
Kobe.
many as Kobe, and he's one spot above Kobe just because I think he, the Spurs, I don't think they were that good. They had David Robinson, but Tim Duncan's stardom really is what made the Spurs to what they are today, which is a well respected historical team. Tim Duncan, number 7. Tim.
That's fair. Number 6, I have the big Aristotle, Shaq Diesel. Look, man, he's the purest form of dominance that we've ever seen. I really wish I could have watched him play in his prime because I'm sure I would have loved him. And he's also again, underrated defender, bully down low. Nobody could stop him. You could not even hope to really contain that man. Like,
Mhm.
really, the only method to kind of stop him was to foul him. And even then, he still kind of found his way to get buckets. Um, and he just seemed to kind of find success anywhere he went, which is also something I really liked about him. He had a fantastic career, all-star most of his career to the very tail end, which we don't really talk about that. But I have him at number 6. I think that his dominance alone puts him that high.
Okay, and on the fast break here, we own up to our mistakes, and my mistake is I forgot about Shaquille O'Neal. So I mean, in my list, he's not in the top 10, but if I could redo it, he would be a top 10 player.
Honest
Anyways,
mistake.
moving on,
Honest
moving
mistake.
on.
We'll
Honest
let it
mistake.
slide.
We'll let it slide. Number 6, I'm going. This is a guy, in my opinion, is tough to place because Bill Russell is my number 6. He played in an era where, first of all, the pace was off the charts. I don't even know who was playing. They could be farmers. I don't know. It's really tough to assess his dominance. But the 11 rings is something. I don't care what era you play in. He
Mm,
won the championship 11 times, and he really makes the Celtics what they are today. I mean, without the 11 chips, we only have 6 of them. Bill, obviously a great defender, insane rebounder, just perfected the art of rebounding.
mhm.
Um, good defender. Obviously, I said that.
Mhm.
And yeah, Bill 6 for me. And yeah, yeah.
Cool. Number 5 for me, Magic Johnson. Look, man, first ever positionless player. I do have him over Larry. And to be honest, I feel like they're pretty close, but that's just because I'm a Celtics fan. No bias. This is just to prove I'm no bias. Magic Johnson, man, just incredible. Like I just said, or I don't know if I just said this, but first ever positionless player in my eyes. You know, super lengthy, super big. He changed the game. He changed how basketball is played pretty much. Really was not much of a shooter, but I mean, his insane finishing made up for it. His incredible playmaker, in my opinion, the best pick and roll playmaker of all time, and the best short roll playmaker of all time. You know, whenever he was paired with a great center, with an elite center, I mean, he just made magic. That's why it's his name, Magic Johnson,
Yeah.
number 5 for me. Absolute unit, absolute stud. He did it. He got it
Not
done.
number 5, Larry Legend, Larry Bird. Obviously, being a Celtics fan, I love Larry.
Mm-hmm.
Luca touched on it. I mean, he was so well rounded. I don't think people talk about it. He was
Yeah.
a really good rebounder. I mean, I'm pretty sure maybe he averaged 10, if not high nines. Forgive
He
me.
averaged 10
Good.
pretty much every year of his career, I
Yeah.
think.
I mean, good passer.
Mm,
Three back-to-back MVPs.
mm,
Finals, 3 of them. Injuries, though. I mean, he didn't have the longest career, and
mm.
in a sense, he kind of reminds me of Barry Sanders without the winning. I don't know. That's a very different analogy, but Larry to me, number 5, and yeah, I think he's worthy of the spot. I would put him above Bill, obviously, just because of the era. I mean, I don't know how Bill. I mean, Bill would still be a dog in the '80s, but I'm gonna go with Larry because he won in one of the toughest eras of basketball we've ever seen.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I think Larry Bird probably has one of the best prime, like one of the best peaks of all
Hmm.
time. You know, yeah, injuries of course play into consideration, but number 4, moving on to the best of the best. I actually have Bill Russell here, and I'm a
Okay.
big Bill Russell fan. I'm not even considering my Celtics fandom.
Yeah.
Bill Russell is the best defender to ever play the game of basketball.
Yeah.
And if you don't understand this, Bill Russell maybe averaged like 12 points for his career.
Hmm.
Not much of a
Yeah.
scorer. In fact, pretty inefficient. I think he shot like 45% most seasons. But his defense alone puts him almost on the pedestal. He is number 4, so he's not quite on the pedestal. But he, you know, always turned up in the playoffs. That's how he won 11 rings. And I actually have a pretty interesting stat just to show you how good his defense was.
Okay.
He won 11 championships purely through defense. Boston has 5 of the best defensive teams of all time. Bill was on all 5 of those teams, and they were always the best defensive team in the league with Bill on the team. Bill was
Hmm.
never on a team that was not number 1 in defense. I feel like that just goes to show how
Yeah.
elite he was. You can't make it up. Bill Russell, Rudy Gobert on crack for those who
Yeah. I
don't
was
know.
just about to say that. Yeah.
Yeah, if you watch modern basketball, that's his player
Hmm.
comparison. Rudy Gobert times like 5. That's how good he is.
Number 4 for me, Magic Johnson. Again, I put him above Larry. And I
Mm-hmm.
think Magic's influence on the game is kind of underrated. I mean, we see all these big guards, Ben Simmons. I mean, Ben Simmons is terrible. That's not a good example. But like Lonzo Ball, we see these taller guards that can pass the ball, and they always get Magic comparisons.
Mm-hmm.
Magic, again, first positionless player in basketball. Great rebounder for his size. Great passer. Good leader. The Lakers and the Celtics. I mean, I wish I was alive in the '80s so I could see these battles between Larry and Magic. He's number 4 for me, and yeah,
Well, then moving on to the top 3, we got
yep,
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
okay,
I feel like the top 3, this is pretty. There's going to be 3 guys who are obviously going to
yeah,
be here. Kareem, probably the best two-way center ever.
hmm,
And the thing is, I mean, obviously he's a leading scorer of all time. The three-point shot really was not prevalent during his
yeah,
time, but had it been, I feel like he would have probably blown. He might be the
yeah,
GOAT had it been,
yeah,
had he played in the modern NBA. He was a great free throw shooter, which leads me to believe that he would have been a good 3-point shooter.
yeah.
Um, I mean, great score, man. What couldn't he do, really? There really wasn't much. Just pure dominance. He got in the league right away and started averaging 30 his rookie year.
Okay.
What else needs to be said, man? He's a stud for sure.
Um, Number 3, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Mhm.
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar,
That was a
Lou
butcher.
Alcindor. Um, Two identities, two different teams, the Bucks, the Lakers. It doesn't matter. He's elite. Number 3 for me, just an absolute scorer, good free throw shooter.
Mhm.
Led the Bucks to the title, then one of the Lakers, dominated there.
Same thing.
I would I mean, I want to see Kareem in the modern NBA. Obviously, he can't suit up right now at 60, but if he was in the NBA, like you said, I think he would be the GOAT. And just like honestly, a quick side note: Karl Malone didn't make the list, but
Mhm.
Karl Malone didn't shoot the three, and he's number 2 all time in points. So maybe Karl Malone is a little overlooked. Obviously, this is just on court, off the court. We don't
Oh
like Karl
yeah,
Malone.
we don't mess with Karl
Um,
Malone the person.
no. And
Not at
then
all.
number 2, it's gonna be 2 guys. We know who they are, and the order is to be determined. I
Yeah.
think we might have different orders. I could be wrong.
I'd say this isn't the debate. We have an entirely new
Yeah,
debate.
yeah.
This episode
Okay.
may be long, and I'm here
Yeah.
for it. I'm excited for it. I think
Okay.
so. We're just gonna be transparent with you.
Yeah.
My number 2 is LeBron.
Okay.
My goat's MJ. I'm sure yours is
Yeah.
the opposite.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you go ahead first. Just
Okay.
explain, just very briefly. Let's just hear it.
Number 2 is Michael Jeffrey Jordan, and number 1 is the King LeBron James. And I'm not even gonna lie to you. Just be honest. If I was born in the 70s or the 80s, maybe I would put MJ number 1. I don't know, but I've watched LeBron, and I've watched his dominance. The way he played, like I don't even know. I'm out of words. The way he plays basketball, it's like a robot. I mean,
Mhm.
not like a superhuman. I mean,
Yeah,
what can he not do?
shoot free
First of all,
throws.
he can
No,
or beat Don Cheadle in Space Jam without having to recruit his son.
facts.
So LeBron number 1. I mean, rebounder, good
Mhm.
rebounder, scorer, just overall dominance. I mean, the 3-point shot, I guess you could say is a little bit iffy, but if we're
Mhm.
going back to his Miami days, I would say 3-point shot was pretty solid.
Mhm.
His finishing, I mean, this guy is just an absolute assassin when it comes to finishing. No mercy, just pure dominance. The rings, obviously, the rings, okay, he has 4 rings, and Michael Jordan has 6 rings. But the way I look at it is, if you gave Michael, and this is going to be a big statement, and I'm all here for it. So LeBron James, one of his teams, the last season in Cleveland, consists of Shetty Osman, Rodney Hood, George Hill, J.R. Smith, Kevin Love. Here's one of my main points. If you gave Michael Jordan that team, I don't know if they make it to the finals. And I'm going to just LeBron's way to take over a game and literally carry his whole team on the back. I don't know if Jordan had it. He had Pippen, and he had other solid guys. But let's hear your debate,
Well,
your
one
side
thing
of it.
that I hear with a lot of LeBron GOAT guys is, and this is kind of
Yeah,
something you
yeah,
actually mentioned a
yeah.
lot, is talent, pure talent.
Okay,
Now, I'm
yeah,
not going to sit here and tell you that MJ is more talented than LeBron. LeBron's the most
yeah,
talented player ever, the most
yeah.
well-rounded player, insane defender, insane scorer. He does it all, man. I mean, really, his only weakness is free throws, and he's not even that terrible of a free throw shooter, to be honest. But when I rank players of all time, when I rank my top 10, when I rank my GOAT, I rank them comparatively to the talent in their respective era, but more importantly, I rank them relative to the era based on how they dominated and performed. And nobody in NBA history has dominated an era, especially considering that the era that Michael Jordan played in was incredibly talented. It had a lot of competition. I know a lot of people say plumbers. If you say you played plumbers, you don't know what you're talking about, man. I don't know what else to tell you. Um, Nobody dominated an era like MJ, in my opinion. And of course, there were guys like Will Chamberlain and Bill Russell. But MJ, combining talent and dominance over an era, I think MJ just takes the cake. He single-handedly made a team a dynasty. I don't think you can say LeBron did that. I think that he had to chase rings, kind of, not really, but he had to go after it. It sort of came to MJ. Um, I feel like LeBron, if he won more hardware, if he really dominated this era, I know he went to the finals, but his track record wasn't the greatest. 4 chips to Jordan 6. Jordan dominated an era, and his I mean, keep in mind, if he had played, if he didn't have those gap years where
Hmm.
he retired for baseball,
Yeah.
he was probably suspended for gambling. But if he didn't have those gap years, he probably would have won 8. Let's be honest. Um, I feel like you have to look at the dominance relative to the era. I think that LeBron's more talented. I think MJ's the GOAT because of his legacy. That's just how I look
Here's
at
a
it.
here's a crazy thing though. LeBron's not done. I mean, he could get another 2 rings with the Lakers. If we're just being 100% honest, he could win 2 rings. And in my opinion, I don't know. Like, here's so LeBron, what is he 4-7 or 4-6 in finals?
He might be 4-7 because I believe he's been to
Okay.
11. I
Okay.
believe.
So let's say LeBron wins 2 more and he goes to
Mhm.
6-7. Do you put him above Jordan then if the guy's been to 13 finals and has the same amount? Or do you take into account the fact that Mike went 6-0 compared to LeBron 6-7?
I mean, Mike did
So
go 6-0, but I mean,
mhm,
there is always the argument that he did lose in the
yeah,
first round, I believe. So LeBron has
yeah,
only lost in the first round once, but you kind of have to give it to him. His team
yeah,
was injured.
yeah.
It's very conditional.
Anthony Davis. Okay.
I mean, LeBron as a recruiter, man. I mean, you can't take away from him. Obviously, probably the most talented player of our lifetime for sure. If he wins in LA, I mean, you definitely could make a GOAT case, but then again, you can't say, oh, he didn't have any help. That narrative is out the
Yeah.
window. So still, I would consider Jordan the GOAT personally. Um, but LeBron does have a very sound case. And honestly, depending on what we see from him, depending on the only thing is, and I'm gonna wrap it up because I know we're taking a little, or I'm taking a little bit longer than we anticipated, but LeBron's doing this all at a very old age.
Hmm.
He easily has the longest and probably best peak in
Yeah.
NBA history. That would make it probably more impressive. So I could definitely see it. He definitely has a chance. I don't know how big that chance is, but he could do it for sure.
And I have something to say. I mean, this podcast probably is going to be our longest episode.
Mm,
I don't really care if you want to watch it all. I just want to talk about basketball.
mhm.
The thing about me as a LeBron GOAT guy, it's difficult to really defend it because in one hand you say, okay, he had no help during his last years in Cleveland. He was playing with Rodney Hood, Larry Nance, J.R. Smith. But then he goes to LA and he gets Russ and Anthony Davis. So in that case, I mean, like if he doesn't win a couple more chips or he's not successful with the talent that he has, it's kind of hard to defend him as a GOAT when you're already using the point that he had no help, if that makes any sense. Like
Yeah.
Miami, he built a super team. Did he really maximize it? I don't know. Maybe he could have got a couple more rings when he lost to Dirk and the Spurs.
Mm.
But then he carries Cleveland. So it's really like a difficult thing to assess.
Yeah. And to end this off, I'm just gonna say if you say MJ like played plumbers and he shouldn't have even lost at all. I mean, that Mavs team, that Dirk is great. Don't get me wrong.
JJ Barea, I can
That was
even
a
admit it. I
that was
like,
a
yeah,
washed up team. Tyson Chandler, Jason Kidd, like you lost the old, like you really lost the old
yeah.
heads. So if you're gonna make that argument, you gotta consider, when they lost to Dallas. But moving on to our last topic, and me and Vinny. So I guess I'll just preface this before we go in, and I'll let you make your argument first because I feel like mine's a little bit extensive.
Yeah.
Um, Me and Vinny often, well, after the playoffs basically concluded, Vinny was saying how he believes Giannis is the best player in the league, or at least the most dominant player. On the other hand, I believe it was KD, and we had a lot of we were talking about this a lot recently, and I want to have an official kind of debate
Yeah.
on this podcast. We haven't really had one yet. Um, Vinny has Giannis, I have KD, so let's talk about it. Let's really find out who we think is the most dominant player. I'm gonna let you start.
Okay. Here's the thing about dominance. Okay. Dominance, this is going to go off the chart. Dominance in nature. We're starting in nature.
Mm,
Let's say a lion goes and absolutely snatches a mouse. That's dominance. He's going to the mouse, he's eating it in one bite. Dominance to me is Shaq. Dominance to me, it can come in many different forms. But to me,
mhm.
when I see dominance, I see ruthlessness. And that's what I saw with Giannis in the finals. This guy, I can't put it in words. I mean, when I was watching game 6, I was on my couch and I felt like I was witnessing history. I mean, he took over game 6, okay? He won a championship for a team that hasn't won one in 50 years. And 5 years ago, they were starting Larry Sanders, Ersan Ilyasova, and some scrubs. His dominance, to me, I think him being most dominant. KD obviously was dominant, but I think Giannis by far is the most dominant. In terms of best player, though, like we can kind of make multiple debates about this. Best player to me is a little harder to defend Giannis as the best player in the league. I think he's the most dominant. Best player, I'll still take him, but there are offensive liabilities in the game if we're being honest. Mid-range shooter can't really get his own shot outside of the paint,
Mm,
but obviously he excels in getting to the rim,
mm,
finishing with either hand, finishing through contact. The free throws, okay. We know the memes 1, 2, 3, 4. Game 6, he shot really good from the free throw line when it mattered. The 3-point shot is something that I don't know if he'll ever develop a consistent 3-point shot, because if you watch Bucks games, there's sometimes he shoots 6 and he goes 0-6. But then there's sometimes he shoots 6 and he goes 3-6.
Mm.
There's like you see some spots where he could be a decent shooter. I don't know if he'll ever be consistent enough to be a decent shooter. But what I do know is we haven't even touched on defense. I'm just speaking strictly offense. He can finish at the rim. Okay, defensively, he is insane. We talk about switching 1 through 5. This guy can literally switch 1 through 5. Whether it's John Morant, whether it's DeAndre Ayton, whether it's Clint Capella, it doesn't matter. He can defend anything. His length is absolutely unmatched. His dominance at the rim defensively, we know the DeAndre Ayton block shot. He blocks shots. He wins defensive players of the year. He can guard the perimeter, contest outside shots. And I mean, that's just my whole case for Giannis. Obviously, if you bring up something, I can talk more about Giannis, but that's my Giannis case.
Well, I'm going to start off by saying that, I mean, when I was thinking about this prompt, I was mostly thinking about all around dominance. Now, when I think of dominance, I think of a guy who can do it all at a very high level. In my eyes, and I mean, this I feel like is pretty accurate. Like, it's kind of hard to disagree with this. Giannis is very one-dimensional, and he's great at what he does. Do not get me wrong. I mean, easily probably the second best paint scorer in the league behind Zion, in my opinion. But he's, I mean, probably peaking at number 1 if we're being honest. But if anything, his shooting abilities have gotten worse. And in my opinion, KD trumps him in pretty much every facet of offense, except basically scoring at the rim. Which, I mean, also for what it's worth, is the easiest shot in basketball. But you know, we'll get into it. My defense for KD though is that, well, first things first, before I start, these guys are both dominant in their own regard.
Okay.
But KD has probably the most versatile bag offensively out of anybody of all time.
Yeah.
Probably the best 3-level scorer of all time. Very underrated playmaker, and I actually found a stat. He was top 10 in both playmaking value rating and offensive box creation, which for those at home who don't know, there's 2 ratings which reference impact based off pure playmaking. So he was top 10 in that. Underrated playmaker, which I thought was interesting. And he's never been a staple defender like how you were talking about Giannis, but I think he's definitely a positive defender. I mean, you know, he has length. He averages, you know, over a block and a half, I think, maybe this year, close to it at least.
Around it, yeah.
You know, and he moves like a guard. So he has that the lateral quickness to be a solid defender. But I actually thought of a couple of points. I just want to make them for the comparison between Giannis and KD. I'll just run through them really quickly. First of all, I mean, the team situation, which they both had this year, I think, because we're talking about this year, their dominance and their all-around talent. First of all, the Nets had a very fluctuating season. Their system was changing very frequently. KD was still dealing with that nagging Achilles injury, which I think is a very good point to bring up. He was dealing with injuries all this year, coming off a very serious injury that very few players recover from. Still had concurrent hamstring issues this year. Kyrie was being a diva. Harden and Kyrie also really weren't conforming to their supporting players' roles around Kevin Durant. Whereas Giannis had not a perfect year, but a pretty good year in terms of his team supporting cast. I mean, you know, very few team injuries. His team wasn't going through an identity crisis in terms of, you know, what roles were the supporting guys playing. And he was given the keys to the offense. He was the definite go-to guy. And then obviously in the playoffs, Brooklyn had a ton of injuries. You know, Harden was out game 1 of their semifinal matchup, and Kyrie also missed time. And I think that was really a true matchup. We saw them go back to back. I mean, head to head rather. But I feel like Giannis had the more consistent roster throughout the whole season. So that was my number 1, just team situation, I guess. Number 2, all around offense. And I think this is just my last point pretty much. All around offense, Giannis takes 50% of his total shots at the rim. He hits them at an insane clip, 83%. That's, you know, obviously crazy good. Like I said, one of the best paint scorers in the league. He averaged about 18.8 points in the paint in the restricted area, which is a vast majority of his points. So it's not easy to stop Giannis, but in my opinion, it's kind of easier to know what he's going to do because, you know where he wants to take a shot. Like you said, he can't really create a shot anywhere outside of the paint. But I feel like KD's shot frequencies vary in different locations, which makes him very unpredictable and thus harder to stop, which plays into his prediction. I'll just read some of the stats. I'm not going to be super stat heavy. 15% of his shots come at the rim, 55 from mid range, and 30 from three. He's all over the place and insane efficiency, 53%, 45, and almost 90. I mean, how many players are really doing that realistically? So in my opinion, I know Giannis scores a lot of his points in the paint, but he's a more efficient and better scorer. He has a better relative true shooting by a sizable margin because nobody can stop him from getting buckets, to be honest with you. And KD played less than half of Giannis's games this year. He had still had 20 more three-pointers on 40 less attempts, and he had much more mid-range shots. I forget the exact number. I feel like KD, really to just sum all this up, KD, when he was on the floor, was the captain of the best, probably the best offense on paper of all time, in my opinion. I think he had a larger impact. I'm just going to say it to team success, even though Giannis won the championship. KD didn't play enough games to really get the best out of the Nets this season. I think come next year, I think everybody's really going to see the truth that KD is just the better player. And honestly, the more dominant player. I'm going to say he's more dominant. I'm going to be completely honest. That's what I think.
I have a lot of points to make, and I guess this one kind of goes for both of our guys. The coaching situation with Giannis, not the best. Obviously, with KD, Steve Nash, first-year coach. If you're a first-year coach, you don't really know that much. But we have a guy in Mike Budenholzer, and I've been very critical of him. He won the chip, okay? So, I mean, obviously, I can't roast this guy too much. His rotations, to put it frankly, just suck a lot of the time. He's not an analytical guy, which I obviously like as in a coach. He's more of an old-fashioned guy. So I think Bud's struggles as a coach do affect Giannis. And I know you said that they weren't really going through a crisis, but I think in some sorts, Giannis, he's gone through a lot of changes in whether they be small. I do think they affect him. So, I mean, when he came in the league, the team wasn't good, okay? Then they got good. He had a guy like Eric Bledsoe, Malcolm Brogdon in the backcourt, okay? He couldn't win with them. Then they bring in Drew Holiday, who you have a year to gel with, and I know Drew is a very team-friendly guy. Like, he can fit into pretty much any system. But I think Giannis with Drew, that was kind of an overlooked dynamic that, I mean, they had another all-star type talent in Drew Holiday that Giannis had to get to know. Chris Middleton, obviously being there in Milwaukee for a while, has helped him. They play very well off each other. And I guess I'm going to bring the same point up. Kevin Durant's a good defender. Sometimes I think he wastes a lot of his energy, and I know he's great at it, on the offensive end. He's an elite offensive guy, the best scorer I have ever seen. But overall dominance to me is on both sides of the court. So I'm going to give it to KD. Maybe he's more offensively dominant. But defensively, when I watch Giannis defensively, I see it the same way I see it on offense. With KD's a good defender and an elite offensive player. I think Giannis is a great I'm going to say he's a great offensive player and an elite defender. So I think Giannis, in terms of both sides of the court, maybe is a little more well-rounded, dominant in that sense. And we shall see next year because I'm being honest, I'm confident the Bucks chance to repeat. And if I'm right, then I'm right. And if I'm wrong, then I'm wrong. And you know what? I have something more to say. Going back to our top 10 list, this will be the last topic, I promise you. We're not going to bore you.
Let's go for it.
We both didn't have one guy in there, and that guy is Wilt Chamberlain.
I was about to say that.
I read your mind, bro. Wilt Chamberlain, we'll touch on Wilt for a bit. I think we can both agree that Wilt is overrated.
Oh yeah, because I mean, and you actually said this about Bill Russell, is that the pace of play during the era which Wilt played was, I believe, 50s and maybe early 60s. Very fast paced, which is why he averaged, his 50-point season and stuff like that. He didn't win much either, so he didn't really contribute to dominating in terms of team success, maybe personal success. But and really he had a really weird career because he had some seasons where he averaged 50 and then like the next year he averaged 14. It's very strange, but people look into the numbers at face value way too much. If you are a basketball head, and like we know that the pace of game was just absolutely insane. And I actually saw something, and I think we've both seen this, where
Yeah.
if you were to take some
Russ.
guys today, Russell Westbrook, James Harden, and you were to inflate the pace of play to the level that Wilt was playing at, these guys would be averaging 60-point triple doubles
60,
too.
yeah.
It's really not that impressive. I mean, 50 points, it's somewhat respectable. Obviously, you can't knock that, but you have to really look at the truth to the situation. So Wilt's not top 10, probably top 20, I
Yeah.
would say. But
Yeah, no, top 20, maybe top 15 if we're pushing it, maybe somewhere around 17. I mean, this guy got his 100-point game. I mean, it's close to Hershey Park. It's in the music park. No, I'm just kidding. Wilt, he never really beat Bill in the finals. Bill was pretty dominant over him in that. And I know everyone's like, oh my God, Wilt averaged 50, Bill averaged 14. Again, if you're a basketball head and you're subscribed to this channel, you know that that's not everything. The pace of play, like Lucas said, I mean, Russ is averaging 60, 20, and 20 if you put him back in the 50s. Does that mean Russ is a top 5 player of all time? No, that just means that the pace of play was so inflated that it inflated Wilt's numbers. Yeah, and that's really it.
Well, we covered a lot this podcast. This is probably my favorite episode we've done so far. We had a good debate. I'm still rocking with KD, but you definitely made some sound arguments with Giannis.
Yeah.
Closing remarks. I mean, what else we got to say?
Nothing. Episode 9 should be out probably a week. Oh my gosh, a week from when you're seeing this. And subscribe, comment. Obviously, we hit 50. Thank you. We're gonna hit 55.
Very
Peace.
soon.